wanted to be a teacher actually growing up, so it's interesting that I am now back in teaching. So I have an IT background. I was in IT for 18 years. When we moved here, it's similar challenges to what everybody else faces. No career prospects and everything is so different. So I started working odd jobs. I was pumping gas. Then I started waitressing, and it was quite a shock coming from. They want to discourage you as such. It's just that they care about you. Yeah. But in their thinking, that's not the way to go because they think there's too much risk. Right. And you'll get hurt. If I looked somebody in the eye, like a guy, I would get in trouble. It was like, oh, you're challenging us. So I moved from TD coming here. I didn't really want to do a job. I wanted to start my own business. I was trading for a bit. At the time, I was already teaching other licensing programs. I was doing Canadian securities course for banking. I was doing the insurance program. Your identity changes. You can change the way you look at it or think of yourself by just doing stuff, and before you know it, you become that person.
Hello, Satyakal. Namaste Adab. Friends, I'm Sharon Ali and you're watching Hunny Walia shows. In today's episode of Through the Eyes of a Woman, we have with us Raman Gill. Raman is married with 2 beautiful children and the owner of Alberta Real Estate School. Raman, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you for having me.
So Raman, tell us a little bit about your history, where you were born, what your goals were as a child, if you had any.
I was born in India and moved here in '97, so I've been here a while. I wanted to be a teacher actually growing up, so it's interesting that I am now back in teaching. So I have an IT background. I was in IT for 18 years.
Oh wow!
And then I'm back. Now I'm teaching. So I think teaching is my sweet spot.
Great. Okay. So you came to Canada in 1997, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have any setbacks coming to Canada? Or some issues or anything? Well,
I think it's difficult when you move. However, well, first of all, I didn't want to move. All my friends were there. I liked being in India. It was comfortable. But my parents felt that it would be better for us kids to be in Canada. Would have a better life. Now, looking back at it, I'm glad they forced the issue because I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to move. I just wanted to stay. And I tried everything I could to get them to even leave me behind, and they could come back and visit, but they didn't agree to it. But when we moved here, it's similar challenges to what everybody else faces. No career prospects and everything is so different. When I moved, it was an interesting time. I just started college, and when I moved here, we didn't have any family, so we didn't really know anybody, and there was no guidance in terms of what do you do. Everybody said I have to go back to grade 12. I'm like, I'm not going back to grade 12. I need to go to college.
Right.
And I didn't know how to do that. It's such a silly thing, but it's interesting how you don't know small stuff. I didn't know how to enroll for a university. I just didn't know. Yeah. So I started working odd jobs. I was pumping gas. Then I started waitressing, and it was quite a shock coming from. So in India, I went to boarding school, so I had fairly, comfortable life there. Didn't really have to do anything at home, and then I come here and I am basically serving people.
Scratch. Yeah.
It was just the contrast between going from not touching anything to serving people. It was just very different. Like you were used to having people do stuff for you, and then you were in that position. And they handed me the first day on the job. They handed me after it was at a banquet hall. So after the party was done, we cleared the tables and so forth. So I kind of got through that. Yeah. But then they handed me a toilet brush. They were like, go clean the toilets. And I just burst out crying. I'm like, okay, I can't do that. I had never in my life touched a toilet brush. So anyway, a friend of mine who actually got me the job did that for me. She ended up doing that. But shortly after, I was like, okay, this is not the type of job that I want. So I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to go back to school. And then it's very important who you surround yourself with. So everybody that I was surrounded with were in those type of roles, like working at Tim Hortons or doing labor jobs and stuff like that. So when I spoke to somebody about going back to school, they were like, no. So I went and found CDI college. So I was like, okay, I can go there. That was the only place that I could figure out that I could apply without having to go through. I thought it was going to be a really strict, hard process to get into the university. So I went to CDI college, applied apply there, it was, I think, becoming a software developer was 17,000, and becoming an IT network admin, it was 12,000.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't have either. I didn't have 12 or the 17,000.
Yeah.
So I figured, okay, 12,000 is easier. It's better. It's $5,000 cheaper.
Right.
So that's why I thought I would do that. But everybody around me said, oh, this is just a dumb thing to do. You should not spend so much money that you don't have, because I didn't have any credit. I didn't have money. I didn't have anything. And my parents were new to country as well, so I didn't want them to come up with $12,000 for my education.
Right.
And I didn't know how to apply for a student loan. So, but that's it kind of goes back to every single person that I spoke to said, don't do it. And I said, no, this is an investment in myself that I will do it. I'm going to do it. So I just kind of shut my ears and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do it.
That's great. I mean, especially coming new and all your friends telling you, discouraging you not to do something while you were more, independent and thought, no, I got to get something done. And you went for it. That's great. Good for you.
It's interesting how in life I find we come to different places in life where everybody will tell you to not do it, because not that they want to discourage you as such. It's just that they care about you.
Yeah.
But in their thinking, that's not the way to go, because they think there's too much risk.
Right.
And you'll get hurt. But sometimes I think we just have to step outside of that and say, okay, I'm willing to take the risk, and if something happens, I mean, it was $12,000, but at the time it was a lot of money.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Well, good for you for going forward on that, even though you had people kind of discouraging you. Good for you for, making your mind up and saying, I'm going to do this, and went ahead with it. That's perfect. So you have 2 children, 2 girls.
Yes.
When did you get married? Did you get married in India or when you came to Canada?
No, I got married 2006.
Okay, so in Canada?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Where did you and your husband meet?
Online.
Oh, nice. Hey, nothing wrong with that. That's the in thing nowadays, is online dating, meeting people online.
But back then, 17 years ago, it wasn't.
True,
for me, it was okay, because I was in IT. That was my world. Online was my world, or just IT.
Yeah.
But for him, he told everybody, oh, we met at a friend's barbecue party. I'm like, sure.
Is that what he says?
That's what he told at the time. He told everybody.
So was he back in India when you met him on?
Oh, no, he was here.
Oh,
he grew up here, yeah.
Oh, okay, nice. Wow, well, good for you. Look at that, right? How long have you been married?
We've been married 15 years, and we've known each other for about 17 years.
That's great. That's wonderful. I love hearing stories like that. So what was it like being a busy mom of 2 and then having to go through all your career? Like, you went through a couple of career changes. What was that like? Did you have support? Anyone helping you with the kids, or?
So I started off with the IT. So I did the IT diploma at CDI College, and then I went on to get a job in that field. So I slowly progressed and then started my own IT consulting company. So I did that for a bit. And then we moved to, after we got married, I moved to Toronto with my husband. And he's in banking. So he, Toronto is the financial hub. So he wanted to be there. So we ended up moving there. And then I decided to go back to school. So I wanted to do MBA. That was always my passion. I wanted to have an MBA. That was my goal from the very beginning.
Right.
So I decided to go. Apply. And by that time, but then I had to go back because I only had a diploma. So I had to go back to school, and I had to go to university. I had to finish my degree. So you cannot have an MBA without a degree. So I had to do my bachelor's in computer science, and it was all part time because I was doing other stuff at the time. So it took me a long time to actually get it done. And then finally I applied for my MBA. By that time I had a baby. I had a 6-month-old when I went and applied. And I had a full-time job as well. Like, she ended up going back to my work early, and my husband took some of the parental leave. So that was nice.
That's nice. Yeah,
that was really nice. He actually would have lunch ready for me because we lived very close to my work, and he would have the lunch ready. He would really enjoy the time with the older one.
It's so wonderful to have that support too from your husband, right?
Yeah, in that respect, I have to say I'm blessed. In that, I mean, no relationship is perfect because we're all individuals, and we're very headstrong individuals. But he is very good in that sense. He's very supportive, very much of an equal sort of a relationship, which
Right.
is
That's
it's
wonderful.
nice to
And that
have.
really helps. That really
It
helps.
really does, because when I wanted to go back to school, actually, it's interesting. He's the only one of the few people who actually supported me in doing that, because everybody said, well, you have a child now, you are working full-time, how will you go back to school? And the program that I was applying for was an Ivy League program.
Right.
So when I went to interview with them, they were like, are you sure you want to do this? Because the dropout rate is really high, because the program is really challenging. It was with Cornell University, Cornell and Queen's University in Toronto here. So it was a joint program. And they didn't want me to apply because they seriously thought that I would not be able to finish it. It was just too much to take on.
Really?
Yeah. And then my own parents, they were like, why do you need to do this? Because, well, culturally, we get educated as women so we can find a good husband. So I've done that job. I found a good husband. I have a family now. I have a good job. Now, why do I need to go back to school? So that was sort of the thinking. But I did it anyway.
You did it anyway, and that's great. I mean, kudos to you for going ahead and following your dreams and doing that. Sometimes it's difficult when we have family members, especially holding us back and, saying, oh, then you got to double think, do I really want to do this or not, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what really comes into play is when you have external voices telling you, and again, I don't think it really comes from the place of them not wanting stuff for us, but it's more from them caring for us and not wanting us to get hurt. And it was the same thing from my in-laws family too. They were like, why does Raman want to go back to school now? I was like, Raman nekade millionaire ban jana.
Yeah, right.
So I was like, why do you spend the money? And it was the price tag on it was expensive too, and that was another thing. They were like, well, you should be putting that as a down payment on your house and not spending it on your education.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that coming from them, exactly. So you eventually, with your IT business, you ended up selling it.
Yeah.
Was it something you didn't want to do anymore? Or is it because you eventually moved on to work with TD Bank, or?
Actually, we decided to move to Toronto, so the business was in Vancouver.
Oh, I see. Okay,
and that was the only way I could really do the move, was just sell it. Yeah,
exactly. So with TD Bank, you work with them. Tell us about your journey with TD Bank. You did quite a few things with them as well.
With TD, I was working in their IT department, and this was one of the challenges because I was managing a production support team. So basically my team managed 10,000 servers. So all the critical, like Easy Web, all the critical applications ran on my server. So we were so I had a team that was in 3 different places. So we had Canada, we had a team in US, and then in Singapore as well.
Oh, nice.
So we kind of did the whole follow the globe kind of model. So my team worked off from home way before the whole working from home thing came. So it was quite common for us to work from home. So it was interesting, but the job was very challenging. So while I was going to school, it was crazy. So I would get up at 5 in the morning. So that was the only time I could study. And then I had to, get all the stuff done and go to work. And then the phone would ring at 1 a.m. and I had to be on the call, because when my team is on the call and we have a critical incident where all the servers are down and people can't access the services, so we had to get those on. And my team was always the front line team where we had to fix the problem if none of the other teams could fix it. So we had to. So if my team was on, then I had to be on. So, and it was crazy because some people have children that just fall asleep at 7:30. Mine would not. So I'd be up till midnight trying to get my daughter to go to sleep, and then I would get a call at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And sometimes my husband would just kick me out of the room. He's like, okay, you need to take this elsewhere. It's like, you need to sleep in somewhere else because this is not working, because it was too crazy. And of course, he was helping as well. So with 2 parents who spending sleepless nights, it was a little crazy time. So it was just the whole period was.
So your daughter was how old then? Was she still a baby?
She was still a baby. So when I joined the program, she was about 8 months. And then 2 months into the program, I found out I was expecting.
Oh,
that was a shock.
Wow, your life has been like crazy, one thing after the next, eh?
It seems to be.
Wow. So you were pregnant, you had a baby at home. And you were getting up in the morning, in the middle of the night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, answering calls. Then you had to go to work in the morning.
Yes.
How did you focus? How did you...
There are times when you don't, when you just kind of get through it.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of those times where you think or before you think you're busy, right?
Right.
But I really found out how busy a person can get.
My goodness. So you had a lot of sleepless nights, or?
A lot. I practically didn't sleep for a couple of years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it was all worth it, right?
It was worth it. It was one of the best experiences I have to say.
Yeah.
Going to Cornell and just being able to sit in the class and debate issues with people who I thought would be, you always think, I don't know, me as a woman, I always think, I am here and everybody else knows so much, can do so much. Right. And then you're in the room with them and you're like, you know what? No, they're not.
Right.
You have just as much to offer and you have just as intelligent and you can do stuff the same way that they can.
Absolutely.
But I find a lot of, for me personally, again, I think it's more from being a female, a lot of societal stuff. Like I got told, and a part of me is just my personality. I'm out there too much. I run my mouth too much. I just say stuff.
Right.
And that gets you in trouble. Growing up in India, and again, I don't know other people's experiences, but for me, it was, if I looked somebody in the eye, like a guy, I would get in trouble. It was like, oh, you're challenging us. Oh no, it's just eye contact. But no, it's just some of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because it was seen as, but then again, I was a rebellious child, right? So I didn't do stuff just because you told me to do stuff.
Right.
I did stuff because it made sense to do something. So I was always the one, why? Right? Question stuff. And then sometimes it can come across as being, as if you're challenging people, and sometimes adults don't like being challenged.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was a lot of that. Oh, you should not be doing this, or no, you shouldn't be. When I was in India, I asked my mom, okay, ask one of my cousins to teach me how to ride a motorcycle. She would not. So I said, okay. Then I just took the motorcycle, and then she was having a heart attack.
Oh, goodness.
Oh my God. Because, I was supposed to ride a scooter, right? Because being a female, I could ride a scooter. I'm like, what's wrong? Why can my brother ride it, and I can't ride it, right? And then she was like having a heart palpitation because somebody was visiting us. I was like, okay, I asked them for the keys. They gave it to me.
So you took off with the motorcycle? Oh my God. I can see your mother having a slight heart attack there.
Yeah, so then she was like, okay, you have to teach her.
Yeah. Well, good for you. You seem like a very strong woman. As a kid, too, you're very strong and independent. I can see that. Yeah, that's great.
And it's interesting raising children who are like that. So my younger daughter's very much like that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what my poor mom had to go through.
Yeah, well, that's what they say. We wait till you have kids,
Yeah.
What you go through, then what you put us through, right? So you're currently the owner of Alberta Real Estate School. Yeah. Tell us about that.
So I decided, we moved here to Edmonton about 5 years ago. At the time, so I moved from TD coming here. I didn't really want to do a job. I wanted to start my own business. I was trading for a bit, and it was very isolating. So I was sitting at home trading and crazy. I didn't know anybody, and I'm not the person. I come across as somebody who's very confident, but I'm not a very social person. So I don't go out to talk to people. I won't talk to people. I'm the person who would sit in the party, and I don't say a thing until somebody comes to.
That is hard to believe. That's very hard to believe.
Yeah, I'm actually an introverted, shy person. I don't just go approach, like cold calling for me is so difficult.
Really?
Yeah, approaching people, so difficult.
No, I don't get that impression at all.
But I can stand and do presentations in front of executives. That was okay. So it's interesting. So I started the school because I was wanting to buy investment properties. So we had some rental properties. So we were looking to buy some rental properties here, and I got a real estate agent, and she was showing me properties, and I must have gone through 30 properties. I'm like, this doesn't work. So, and then poor woman, like she kept on going with me. I just felt bad. I'm like, okay, maybe I should get my license, so I can go look at the properties when I wanted to, instead of troubling her. So I started looking around, and there was no tutoring place. So where I've lived in Vancouver and I lived in Toronto. in both of those places, you can go and get tutored. So basically, it's a self-study program. At least in Toronto too, it was a self-study program there as well.
Okay.
But you could go to a school, and they'll sit in the class. You get your classroom instruction done,
right.
and then you go write the exam. So they help you prepare and take you through the course. So when I started here, there was nobody really doing that. So I was like, okay, I joined the program or the online part, and I said, okay, where do I go? Where they will teach me, and there was nobody doing it. So I said, okay, there's an opportunity here. But at the time, I was already teaching other licensing programs. I was doing Canadian Securities course for banking. I was doing the insurance program. So I was teaching those things or helping people prepare for the exam. So once I did my own, so I put an ad on Kijiji. I'm like, is anybody else doing this program? And then I found a couple of people who were doing it, and they were willing to pay me to teach them. So I studied and I taught at the same time. It was incredibly hard, I thought, at the time, but now I can do it in my sleep. But at the time, I'm like, I don't think I can do this.
Look at you. What a great idea. Just going out there and seeing that nobody else is doing it and just putting it out there and having this for yourself. That's a great idea. That's a wonderful concept you came up with.
And it was interesting, like approached Rika, I'm like, can I teach? And they said, anybody can teach, but they said you have no business. Nobody needs it. We have done surveys, and the program that we are providing is sufficient for everybody. They're like, you don't have a business here. I'm like, okay, as long as I can do it, that's all I care about. Let me figure out the business side of it. And now I have to say I'm one of the top tutors in the industry. And I kind of do this. YouTube is my way of getting business.
Right. Well, that's great if it works for you. So do you have a lot of clients behind you then, or a lot of students, I should say?
Now I do. It took a while to get to that stage, 2-3 years, but now people seem to find me online, and
that's great.
Then that's how I get most of my clients.
Perfect. That sounds awesome. Good for you. So tell us about you're passionate about gender equality and women's financial freedom. What is that all?
I grew up in a household, so my dad was in what they call merchant navy, so he was on cargo ships. He was an engineer there, and he used to be away a lot. So he would be away for 8 months, and then he'd be home for 4 months. So he had the contracts were about 6 to 9 months long. And then in the meantime, so my mom would take care of stuff. So she would take care of us. She was almost like a single mom, so she would take care of us. But then she would use the money that he made in his income or his salary and invest that money. So she would buy land. So I grew up in Punjab. So we are, land is basically farmers.
Yes.
We are farmers.
Yeah.
And so she would buy so a lot of women during her time would be going to kiddie parties and doing that kind of stuff. And she was very simple, but she was more focused on investments.
Okay.
So she would just go buy land or she would buy other stuff. So that's kind of how I got interested in real estate.
Yeah.
And when they moved here, once they could invest in properties again, and they started doing that. So this is, I think it's the Indian way of doing things.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, okay. Great. Okay, so you seem to be very health conscious. I kind of creeped you on Facebook. I don't do that all the time. Okay. I notice I do a lot of marathons, and you look after your health. You go to the gym. What kinds of marathons have you run for? How do you prepare for these?
So actually my whole journey into this health industry started way back when I was a child. I participated in a lot to. So again, that was one of those things. Why do you need to do sports? Why don't you just study? Right? So anyways, but when I met my husband, he introduced me to ultimate frisbee. So we used to play together all the time on co-ed teams. So even when my kids were young, so I think I was 6 weeks old, so we had her on the sidelines, and then we would do a swap. So he would run off the field and I would come back on, and we would just do the football. But when we moved to Edmonton, I injured my knee. So I'm actually limping right now because I'm recovering from an ACL surgery.
Okay.
And then it was the second time I torn it on the same ACL, so I couldn't do as much. So I started looking so it was actually a difficult time because for me, sports was a way to, it was an outlet for me to get rid of all the frustrations and stuff like that. And it was really the sports that kind of carried me through life, I feel. And when I couldn't do anymore, I went into depression. It was just very difficult. And actually, I got back into working out as a way to get off of depression medication. So I went to talk to the doctor, and they set me up with a mental health care nurse. And she said, okay, Raman, the only way to get out of this is for you to work out again, to go work out. And I said, I hate gyms. I absolutely hate going to the gym. I will run, but I couldn't run because it was the knee injury didn't allow me to. So she said, Raman, you can run, you just cannot do cutting, anything that involves cutting. So no tennis, no soccer, any of those exercises, frisbee. So I hated going to the gym, but I love playing sports. I can play any sport. You just put it in front of me because it's fun, right? It doesn't feel like a workout. So I had to change my mindset and start enjoying going to the gym. So I started off with going to the gym, and the doctor said, well, you cannot run if your legs aren't strong. So that's where I had to force myself. So I would put my clothes beside the bed, wake up in the morning, and my clothes were there, my shoes are by the front door, and then I would force myself to go to the gym. But it's one of those things, once you start doing something, you don't realize when it becomes a part of your life. So right now it's actually very difficult for me because the gyms have been closed, right? And I struggle working out at home. My husband's good with it. I am not so good with that. So I need that right environment to go do it. But in terms of the marathons, I started doing, we did kind of a couple of half marathons when we were in Toronto. I just signed us up for it.
So your husband runs too?
So I signed us up because we were playing ultimate frisbee, so we were fairly fit. So like, okay, we're going and running a half marathon. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, we're running a half marathon. So we went and played in a tournament. So we played all day. We ran all day. The next day we were doing a half marathon. I pretty almost passed out, but we managed to finish it. But he did well, and so we did a couple of those. But and then I started going to the gym. And I was like, okay, I need to start running again because the legs were getting stronger. So last year, I think it was when I started getting back into that. And I didn't think I could run because my ACL was torn. I didn't think I could run. So it was more of like walk for 90 seconds, run for 30 seconds. So it was interval training that I was doing. And again, like you keep doing something before you know it, that cumulative effect is really what makes a difference.
Absolutely. I agree.
Rome is not conquered in a day, but so I ended up running actually a half marathon. So running a marathon is still on my list. It's still on my bucket list.
So you've done half marathons so far?
I've done a few half marathons.
Okay, how many kilometers is a half marathon, roughly?
Half marathon is 14 kilometers? No, more. 14 miles, I believe.
Okay.
I'm terrible. 23 miles is full marathon. And then 14 miles, I believe, is half.
Oh,
Don't
neat.
quote me on that, but.
So you're preparing at this point for a full marathon then?
So I can start running in another 2 months. So I told the doctor I want two things. My kids are now into skiing, so I want to be able to snowboard. So my husband and I used to snowboard. He takes them now, and I'm sitting at home. So I'm like, okay, I need to snowboard, and I need to be able to run. So those are the two things. And so I cannot snowboard this winter, but the doctor said next winter I should be able to. So I'm thinking next year maybe I'll be able to do a marathon, but half marathon I should be able to do this year.
That's great. It's great that you guys are such an athletic family. It's great that you're incorporating that into the kids as well. Get them out there and be active and you know.
But it's interesting how quickly we can get out of that. Right? Like, I've always been I've always considered myself an athlete, and over the last few years, I wasn't. So your identity changes so quickly. And I think that goes back. So this is an interesting thing I've learned in the last few years is that your identity changes. You can change the way you look at it or think of yourself by just doing stuff, and before you know it, you become that person.
Exactly. Absolutely. Raman, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much. You're a wealth of information, and thank you for sharing your life's journey with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. And to our viewers, thank you so much for all your love and support. For more Hunny Walia shows, tune into our Facebook channel and watch our YouTube channel. Thanks so much. Until next time, take care.